Before I jump into explaining what the hell OT is, I thought I might level set everybody on what OT is not, just so we don't have any confusion. Because if you were to Google OT today, the first thing that comes up is occupational therapy. So that's not what we're talking about today. Overtime, Oregon Trail, Old Testament. For our British friend, we will not be talking about Old Trafford, home of the Red Devils. No, the OT we are talking about today is operational technology. And this is definitely a buzzword nowadays. Depending on who's using this term, I've heard people on the IT side use it to describe like everything operational. And conversely, I've talked to people in the operations space who this term means absolutely nothing to them. That makes it a little bit of a slippery one to define, really in two parts. I like to take the O and the T and break them into two pieces and talk about them separately so that, hopefully when they come back together, they make a little bit more sense. So that's what I'm going to do here, and I'm going to start with the O. OT technology is there to support operations and in a small way be part of operations efforts to make a product. Because making a product is what makes a profit, and that's the goal of a company. So this is what it all comes down to. And I step through this because I want there to be a cognitive connection, a connective string, if you will, between OT and helping the company make a profit. That's what the mission of OT technology is to be part of an industrial organization's profitability mission. This slide is here to basically say what we're talking about with IT/OT is nothing unique. So there are plenty of other corporate business divisions that have a more operationalized wing aligned to helping the company achieve their operational objectives. So to put that another way, OT is just one of many operations-focused resources the company utilizes to accomplish their goals. The fact that IT and industrial IT stuff is finding its way into almost everything. So the proliferation and the speed of change are really unlike anything you see with these other business departments. The challenges, however, I feel are very similar to what these other business departments kind of face. We were talking earlier about one of the smaller operators in the Permian. When I spent time with them, one of the big issues was kind of operational accounting. It seemed like every time they needed to kick up an AFE, depending on the site and even down to the site manager, that AFE would use a different form or follow a different process or different naming conventions. It was totally inefficient and was definitely a bog on their ability to do things quickly. And so the challenge for that operator is for corporate accounting and operational accounting to converge a little bit, to implement some standardization, mature the way that business is being done so it's more aligned to accomplishing their operational objectives. So what we're talking about with IT/OT is really nothing different. All right, so what I'd like to do here is inject a little bit of the why. I don't know about you, but when I'm learning about the what is OT, it helps to understand the why. It's like when I ask my wife if I can buy something. She wants to know why before she even wants to know what it is. So that's what I'm going to do with this example of the Bellingham pipeline incident. Is I'd like to just very quickly and at a very high level introduce kind of the why this focus on OT is happening today, and hopefully that'll kind of add some context to the what is OT question. So I know we got some midstream folks in the crowd, and this incident is well known. So I'm not going to go too deep into what happened. I just have a few sentences here. This does not, and is not intended to, do justice to the scale and complexity of this incident. It was truly a tragedy, and has a lot of layers to it. But the Cliff Notes version is essentially about 250,000 gallons of gasoline leaked from a ruptured pipeline into Whatcom Creek in Bellingham, Washington. that gasoline was eventually ignited and ended up taking the life of 3 people. A terrible tragedy, and like most operational incidents, this wasn't the result of one thing. No, rather, this was the culmination of many small deviations and bad habits, ranging from mechanical issues to instrumentation issues to paperwork and communication issues, contractor issues. All these things kind of coalesced to create this incident. The best way of describing it that I've heard is that it was a domino effect of things. So I'm going to zoom in into just one of these things for the purposes of this conversation, and that was the SCADA computer that Olympic used to monitor the Bellingham pipeline. So this is one of those deviations, one of those bad habits. This computer, over time, started to be used for other things that had nothing to do with monitoring the pipeline. On that day, on the day of the incident, this computer wasn't monitoring the pipeline. Instead, it was doing these other things. If this computer was doing its job, it's probably impossible to say what impact that would have had on the incident. But I don't think it's a stretch to say it would have greatly improved Olympic's ability to respond, and it might have even saved lives. An OT system with a job as critical as that SCADA computer had for monitoring the pipeline should never be multi-purpose. That should be a gap against the best practices and frameworks within your industry. Your OT program should elevate those kind of gaps as risks to your senior management so that they can look at those and understand them and make a decision if those risks are something that they want to address or if they're acceptable and can be ignored or mitigated in some other way. So I'd like to take that one small example and really zoom out and focus on the risk aspect of this, because that's the game changer here. So these boards are seeing pressure now from their shareholders, from their peers, from local government, from regulation to do something about this and to make sure this risk is mitigated. So that pressure is being passed from the boards to the C-suite. And within the C-suite, the recipient of this risk, because of its cyber component, is going down to your CIO or your Chief Information Security Officer, your CISO. And if you're going to ask these folks to own this risk, they're going to want to mitigate that risk. And they're going to want to mitigate it in a way that is measurable and relatable within their world. So these risk mitigation features are being pushed down to operations via an OT program or OT project. Any OT program worth its salt, here's what it'll do. It simply implements best practice, whatever that is for your industry, around the IT and industrial IT systems that have interaction and influence over your critical mechanical operations. I tell you, it's a source of frustration when there are IT systems that are put into the operational space but not maintained like the rest of the operational equipment. When there's no maintenance at all, when there's an expectation that you can just stand this thing up, turn it on, and it's going to run forever, that's got to change because that's not consistent with reality. So I think an OT program is the exact same thing as your mechanical integrity program does, SOPs achieve to do, as a metrology program does around measurement and custody transfer. That should be an effort everyone's behind because we've already seen the value of maintaining an environment that way, and that's what a mature operator does. And that brings us to the point this all comes back to. We do all this so that the company can accomplish its goals. And that wraps up talking about the O in OT. So I understand we're going to take about a 10-minute break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the technology piece. All right, so 10 minutes, thanks. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started again here. Picking back up on the T in OT, talking about technology. So this half of the deck it's definitely loftier. Ironically, it's a little bit more about people and maybe the role technology plays in the future of our industry. So who here likes football analogies? Right, depending on the team. So generically, every football team has special teams, and special teams is not necessarily the most exciting part of a football game. But if you talk to people who know a lot about football and like study football, they might explain or describe special teams this way: that it's the winning hidden advantage of a football team. I think about OT and about technology's role specifically the exact same way. OT and technology is the winning hidden advantage in accomplishing operational objectives because it can enable efficiencies and increase reliability. So as we all know, there's a big focus right now on OT, cybersecurity. So we view security as a reliability effort in OT. I like using examples, so I'd like to extend this further by using an example from Exxon Pipeline. And I have Exxon Pipeline's homepage pulled up, and I've highlighted their kind of mission statement. And I like it because it's concise and tight. The goal of Exxon Pipeline is to move a certain amount of product over a certain geography and do so in a way that is safe, environmentally responsible, and efficient. Now you're probably thinking there's nothing in here about technology or OT, so how is this relevant to what we're talking about? The relevancy starts to rear its head when you follow the money. And to me, pipeline's a great example because it's an industry of margins. Depending on your area, your producer customer will jump providers for pennies. Uptime, integrity, accuracy are king. So in such a competitive, margins-driven business, technology and data are your special teams against margins and competitions. The decision makers within your organization, they should be making their decisions with better data and more of it. So with these abstract benefits in your mind, I'd like you to consider the following perspective. So there are two outlooks you can have when thinking about the future. One is that the industry and the business factors today will trend essentially unchanged into perpetuity, and that asset owners can continue to be profitable and competitive and do business the way they essentially do it today going forward. Or you can look at the future this way, that we are in a transitional phase, driven by two of the greatest inventions the human race has ever conjured up: technology and data. That is perpetuating an evolution. This evolution in no way means that all oil and gas jobs are going to be IT/OT jobs in the future. Far from it. The message here is don't fear the shift. Don't fear the evolution. This is the nature of technology. You get the disruption before you get the improvements. I firmly believe that our most optimal systems will be a marriage between what works in traditional operations and what is working in information technology. So this is my last slide, and it's really here to say that leveraging this evolution is a huge competitive advantage that I think every energy company should be keen to maximize. So that's my deck. Very much appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.